reference to that, I'll be addressing each as candidates, as opposed to the many titles that each of them hold presently and have held in the past. So I'll be addressing them as candidates, more as a focus for the purpose of this evening's forum. We'll be dividing the program into 3 sections. The first section will involve the candidates' introduction of themselves, and they will be afforded a 5-minute segment to do that. We want to know who you are. We want to know what you've done in preparation for this hour and the call to mayor. And we want to know what you plan to do with us as your neighbors in the city of St. Petersburg on a go-forward basis. So 5 minutes each, who you are, where you've been, and where you'd like to head us. The second section will be a question and answer period. These questions have been generated through the various sponsors and the organizations that are hosting the forum this evening. Each question afforded 2 minutes. Each response from each candidate, 2 minutes. The third segment of the program will involve questions from the floor in somewhat of an open forum fashion. Kindly restrict your question to 2 minutes. Responses to 2 minutes. With that, we'll move forward. For those of you who didn't observe on your way in, let me take a few moments to do some housekeeping. Our necessary rooms are just adjacent to the auditorium to the left. Please feel free to exercise your right to choose. There's a little icon on the door that will help. And with that, we'll get started. I'd like to, first of all, address the fact that we're very fortunate as a city to have 3 capable candidates who are willing to put forth the time, energy, and spirit that we need to take us forward for the next 4 years. St. Petersburg is a town that is largely built out in terms of its construction and its structure. But it's also a town that is in a period of regrowth. And with that, I would like to have the candidates tell us again who they are by credential and experience in preparation for this call, where they've been basically, and where they would like to see the city go as mayor. Candidate Ford, we'll begin with you.
Are we on? Can you hear me? Good evening, and thank you, Michelle. I'd like to thank the NAACP, Reverend Sykes, and Baytech Label, Carl Nurse, and of course, Mike Lewis and the Weekly Challenger. It's really an honor to be here this evening, and I am thrilled to be here. To tell you who I am, I'm Kathleen Ford. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A lot of folks don't realize that I have Midwestern roots. My great-uncles fought with the Irish Regiment in the Civil War for the Union, and their names are on a plaque in Vicksburg for that particular battle. And I think that describes a little bit of my background coming from the Midwest and coming with my parents to Virginia. So growing up from 2nd grade through college, where I attended the University of Virginia. And the area that I chose was nursing. I care about people. And that's really been a driving force for me throughout my adult life is I just care about people. And I worked as a pediatric intensive care unit nurse, and I was also the nurse coordinator for the Gulf State Hemophilia Center in Houston, Texas. And I am really excited about the things that I see going on in the medical field, and I'm excited about what's going on here in St. Pete and All Children's. And I'll circle back to that in just a little bit. But as a registered nurse, I had a first-hand opportunity to really see how important it is to have good food so that we have healthy babies, good education so we have successful school experiences, and of course, quality health care so that we can tend to those who have their needs. It's been interesting to see what influence we have seen in probably the past 20 years with the changes in health care and the access to health care. Again, I'll circle back to that later. But it was that background in nursing that really established what I could see were some real issues that needed to be addressed, but I couldn't address those as a nurse. That's why I went to law school. And I attended law school in the evening at South Texas College of Law in Houston, Texas, where I worked full-time as a nurse. And the areas that I was interested in obviously fell into the realm of personal injury, medical malpractice, but then I found I really loved real estate. And I think that's really important when you're looking at the city of St. Petersburg Petersburg, and you're looking at all those matters that involve real estate, and that's my background, and that's our firm's background today. I moved to the city of St. Petersburg in 1987, and I was pregnant with my daughter there, Maggie Ford, my husband Harvey, who's been through this a few times, and thank you all, love you very much. The interesting thing is when we moved to St. Pete, I was 7 months pregnant with Maggie, and I noticed across the street, every Friday night, there would be stretch limos stopping at the house across the street. Somebody jump out, and then they jump back in and take off. I said, Harv, I think they're dealing drugs across the street. That began my involvement with the North Shore Neighborhood Association. A lot of folks think, oh, Old Northeast is really cool and exciting, and it's a wonderful neighborhood, and it is. But it didn't start out that way. That's how I became involved. We came up with the very first neighborhood plan. And so it was with that experience that I began to work with city officials in the codes department, in the planning department, in traffic and engineering, and also, of course, in law enforcement. And it was through that experience that we developed the first neighborhood plan addressing those issues. And then based on that, city staff asked me to help out with Bartlett Park because they were developing a neighborhood plan. So I worked with Charles Payne and Tom Tito, and we worked to get Bartlett Park's neighborhood plan. Well, then they said, Kathleen, come over here. Help us on the city's housing roundtable. And that's how I got to know Daryl Arians and folks at the Housing Authority. And we began to look at how it is that we can address the challenges that we face in St. Petersburg with affordable housing. And of course, that involves a lot of different issues, not only the affordable housing, but then you look at the issues involving whether or not you can have a marketable affordable housing. There were some changes in legislation at the federal level, and we had to disperse what we had in the way of concentrated affordable housing, and that has been taking place over many, many years. And so it's been interesting for me to see the changes, and frankly, I think community policing really works, and I think we need to return to that community policing where the officers really know the families in the neighborhoods. That's really critical. And I think it's a travesty when we have officers shooting at cars. I think we have to get rid of that policy. I also think that we can be smarter about how we're using law enforcement, and I just don't like to hear from my friends in Wildwood who say, Kathleen, there are cars, police cruisers screaming down the street with no siren, no lights. And the chase policy has resulted in some injuries to innocent people, and I think we need to revisit that. I was opposed to it before, and I'm opposed to it today.
Thank you, Ms. Ford.
Well, thank you, and good evening. Thank you to the NAACP for hosting this, along with Weekly Challenger, Carl Nurse, to Hospice for opening this beautiful facility for us, and to all of you for coming out tonight on Thursday night for what is the first in, from what I understand, of our schedules, many candidate debates, which is great because it gives people an opportunity to learn more about who we are. Many of you already know me. I served on City Council and for 6 years served in the state legislature where I fought for common sense. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rick Kriseman. I grew up in West St. Petersburg, attended Boca Ciega High School, the University of Florida, and then came home to attend Stetson College of Law, Stetson University College of Law. I've been married to my wife Carrie for 20 years, and we have 2 children, a daughter Jordan, and my son Samuel. My daughter Jordan just finished her first year of high school at St. Pete High in the IB program, which means that she is 3 years away from graduation and 3 years away from watching her father cry. My family was really the main reason that I decided not to run for re-election to the State House. It was an honor to serve as your voice in the Capitol, to pass some good legislation, and to fight against the bad legislation and to try and slow down Governor Rick Scott's agenda. But there were other reasons that it was important to come back here. And aside from wanting to be back with my family, what was happening in the legislature is not what happens here. And that's, in the legislature, it's all about partisanship. It's not about policy and ideas. And, you know, that's not how local government works. And that certainly isn't how it works here in St. Petersburg. When it comes to policy and ideas and moving forward and having a vision. That's what we need here in St. Petersburg, and it's about leadership. And let me talk a little bit about what we haven't seen and where we need to go as a community. Economic development and creating jobs is really the hallmark of this community and what we've been all about. And when we talk about economic development, we need to remember our local small businesses. It's the small businesses that are paying the community a good wage. It's the small businesses that create the character that makes this community special. We need to have strong public education, and we need to have sound infrastructure. But we also need to focus in on neighborhoods. We've forgotten about neighborhoods here in this community. Neighborhoods are what made St. Petersburg special. It's what made us strong. It's what we were known as. And we've gotten away from that. And when we talk about neighborhoods, we talk about crime, we talk about public safety. And we do need to get back to community policing. It's about relationships. It's about having that relationship with your police officer. It's about having a relationship with people in Washington and Tallahassee so we can bring resources back into this community. And it's about having relationships between City Council and the mayor so that we can be moving and focused on moving this community forward. It's something that hasn't happened, and it's something that needs to change. Now, being mayor isn't about standing for the status quo and maintaining the status quo, and it isn't about simply pointing out what's wrong in this community. It's about finding solutions to problems. It's about bringing people together and unifying our community. It's about being proactive and innovative. Being a mayor is about listening, learning, and leading. And that's something that needs to happen in City Hall. And we need to have a smarter government. Now, smarter government doesn't mean a bigger government. It means having a government that reflects the diversity of the community. And it empowers the community. Now, I'm not running to be mayor because I want to shake up City Hall. I'm running to be mayor because I want to lead this city forward into the future. Because that's what it's all about, is the future. For your kids, for my kids, for all of our kids. To give them a chance to have a better community than they've got right now. And I look forward to that opportunity, and I look forward to talking about the issues with you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. You could be anywhere else and you chose to be here to listen to us and we to listen to you, but thank you. Because I think there's a common thread between all of us, and I think if I surveyed everybody in this room, I think most of you love the city of St. Petersburg. You are passionate about this city. And I'm going to take my 5 minutes to tell you what I've been doing for the last 3.5 years. My wife is here. My wife of almost 28 years has joined me. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Bill Foster. I'm the mayor of St. Petersburg. My son we take to Gainesville on Saturday to join the Summer B rank of the Gator Nation. My daughter just graduated from the University of Florida, and she just, and Kathleen will like this, she just passed her state boards in nursing. And so she's excited about these things that we've done in this medical cluster by nurturing these relationships between all children's and Johns Hopkins and now Bayfront and HMA and USF Shams, there I go again. So there are real opportunities, but when I ran 40 years ago, there were all of these issues swirling around. The big issues that we talked about 4 years ago, homelessness and panhandling, big issues. Crime, public safety, economic development, jobs. And we were heading into this thing we called the recession, and it was a great recession. And together we walked through the valley, and you know what? We did pretty good. My vision, my leadership was to make sure that we could compassionately care for homeless and give them something better than a cardboard box on a sidewalk. And so, together through the partnerships with the county and the sheriff and the state attorney and the public defender, we opened one of the largest homeless shelters in the state called Pinellas Safe Harbor. And the panhandling, I encourage the city council to pass an ordinance, and you don't see the people with these signs anymore holding these signs that to help. And so we tackled that quickly through great partnerships. And then economic development, it was my vision to be prepared for the end of the recession. Let's make sure that we posture the city through environments to be ready for the end. And guess what? That plan worked. Because through a lot of hard work and some great employees, we concentrated on look, smell, and feel. We concentrated on public safety. We concentrated on homeless issues. We concentrated on creating quality spaces of art and culture to bring in that younger demographic, the exciting demographic of tech writers and banking, financing, and insurance, and marine scientists. And so it was these environments that we were able to create. And so now you look around the city, it's the return of the crane, it's the Renaissance 2.0. We've got over a dozen building construction projects now because some really smart people with a lot of money ran all the numbers and they said, you know what, we want to invest in St. Petersburg because this is where the people are, this is where the vibe is, and this is where the people are going to come. That's what I've been working on for the past 3.5 years. And you know what? We are on track for $500 million in construction value this year alone. We haven't seen those numbers since well before I took office. And so these are the things that we've been working on. We're going to continue to work on that. We're not perfect. We struck out a few times. We had some singles and doubles, and yeah, we had some grand slams too. But you know what? We focused on those environments so the private investment community would say, this is where it's happening. And yes, indeed, we focused on things like art and culture, and we were able to close that last part of the deal with Dali Museum and Chihuly and Museum of Fine Arts and supporting American Stage and St. Pete Opera and Palladium and Free Fall and all of these things. For 3 years straight, we were #1 in the country for communities under 500,000 people in art and culture. Why is that important? Because that's important to people, those quality spaces. Because people can live off of a laptop and Wi-Fi. But you know what? They choose to live in St. Petersburg and they fall in love with St. Petersburg because of these environments, because of Grand Central, because of the Warehouse Arts District, because of this vibe we have along this incredible waterfront, which is just blowing up with excitement. That's what I've been doing for the past 3.5 years. Now, what do you... Wow, thank you.
Stay right here. Stay right there. As a follow-up question, and in deference to our key host for this evening, which is the St. Petersburg branch of the Florida chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, I'd like to ask you a question which was proper to the organization in terms of your individual contributions to various constituencies within the city of St. Petersburg, people of color, disadvantaged business, and underserved constituents. The same question will be posed to candidate Kriseman as well as candidate Ford.
I have 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Got to talk fast. I mean, it's real easy. Hindsight's 20/20. And unless you're in the mayor's office making those decisions, it's real easy to criticize. But in the African American community, I think some of the things that we've done in revitalizing Discover the Deuces and negotiating a lease with St. Pete College to move their facility to build a 45,000 square foot facility thanks to Johnny Ruth Clark. I think opening up the Manhattan Casino is incredible in bringing Sylvia's into town. I think completing Jamestown and spending money on Dwight Jones for all of these needed repairs that didn't just occur on my watch, but they were there. I think these are things that were incredible to come up with a CRA, this community redevelopment area that stretches from Midtown all the way to Childs Park. And to have these tax increment financing districts in a partnership with Pinellas County so we can go after grants, so we can work on affordable housing, workforce housing. Now, as far as underserved in the community and those, this is all about economic development and jobs. And sitting down with members of FAST and the construction industry and the Urban League, we were able to craft an ordinance that will spur local hiring, that will incentivize the hiring of local talent. And those hard to hire, those that might have a criminal record, I think we're a city of second chances, so we're working on this ordinance. It's in front of council. We're tweaking it for apprenticeship applications, but these are real things that are happening now. And as far as economic development, I announced yesterday the formation of this partnership called the Greenhouse, and it's all about starting new businesses, growing businesses, and bringing in, retaining existing small businesses, then going after others that will pay a living wage job. And I think as we continue to work in the Dome industrial area, as we try to incentivize those coming into the dip, you're going to see these real changes.
Thank you. Candidate Kriseman. What have you as an individual done to address people of color, disadvantaged business enterprises, and underserved constituents in the city of St. Petersburg?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first off, while I served on city council for the 6 years, I worked closely with Mayor Baker and supported Mayor Baker and all of his initiatives that we did as a community to work on the Midtown Initiative and bring business and change to Midtown, whether it was Sweet Bay or the Manhattan Casino, and a number of the different projects that we worked on and were able to get off the ground. During my time in the legislature, my job was partly to serve as the voice for the voiceless, to be the one speaking out for this community against what was the leadership up there was trying to do to all of us back home here. And it was an honor to work with Representative Roussan as we fought the good fight up there. But we also worked to try and expand Medicaid and to get Obamacare implemented. We worked on voting right issues to try and make sure that everyone had access to vote and had an opportunity to vote, to restore felon rights, and to work on those issues. And also, and something that was a personal passion of mine was public education, trying to make education more accessible, trying to improve our schools so all of our kids had an opportunity to have a future, to have hope, and to know that they had a chance to make something of themselves and to be productive and give back to their community. And I also fought against the frequent attempts of leadership to felonize everything and to make everything a crime, thereby labeling everyone and giving our kids, sending our kids down a road that's difficult to turn back from, that stars them and leaves them with little opportunities to obtain jobs, to get to school, and to earn that degree and make something of themselves. So it was an honor to have the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Kriseman. Candidate Ford, what have you done as an individual to address the issues of people of color, disadvantaged business enterprises, and underserved constituents in the city of St. Petersburg?
Thank you, Michelle. And I discussed a little bit of that earlier when I was talking about my efforts as a neighborhood activist to work with other neighborhoods, particularly Bartlett Park, in order to come up with a neighborhood plan. I was elected to city council, and it was a privilege to serve, and I'm proudest of my nomination of Ernest Billiard to be our first African-American chair of city council. And I'm proud of my nomination for Renee Flowers to be our first African-American chair of city council. Unfortunately, after voting 19 times for her, it still did not happen, but eventually it did, and I'm proud of the work that she's been able to continue doing. And I think it is important that we have representation, and therefore, since the Bush v. Gore debacle here in Florida, I've been working with a group of attorneys here in Florida to look at the issues of voter suppression. It is real, and it is here, and it is very disappointing for the Supreme Court decision that basically got rid of the pre-clearance that was required under the old Voting Rights Act, because as you and I both know, we've seen voter suppression efforts. We have seen what the legislature has done here in Florida. We've seen them load up ballots with constitutional amendments. So that's where I've been focusing my efforts, because it really does matter. It does matter when folks have access to vote. So I've continued those efforts. I've also, on a more fun note, have been working as a volunteer at James Weldon Johnson Library, and I commend Ernie Coney and Kevin Johnson for their longtime commitment to literacy here in the city of St. Petersburg, and James Weldon Johnson in particular. It's a wonderful program. Those spelling bees and math bees and geography bees are a lot of fun, and the kids really have a great time. And we have so many dedicated city staff who are working hard in our libraries, working very diligently in Parks and Rec to make sure that our kids are able to grow and develop. And I support those efforts where I can.
Thank you, candidate. Lest I forget, my capable time assistant is Mr. Jesse Millay. And as you can see, we have them all dressed up in red, so you can't miss them. And thank you so much for being so efficient and so resilient. As the evening goes on, we'll see how long you last, right? As the next area, I'd like for you all to take a moment to reflect on the things that you've said as part of your introduction and the things that you've addressed in terms of our second question as to underserved constituencies. And tell us, what are your top 5 issues? What are the 5 things that you see as most compelling for the next mayor of the city of St. Petersburg? And of those 5 things, what is the one big thing that you propose to impact all 5? What are the 5 key issues, and what is the one key thing you propose that will impact all 5 issues? Candidate 4.
That's a lot. Okay, how many minutes do I have? Okay, 5 key issues. I think it's really critical that we restore our neighborhoods. They are slipping, and that involves making sure that we have the right community policing program, that we've got the right codes program, that we have the right traffic and engineering, traffic calming programs. Another thing that we need to do is look at our children. We have a real problem with our graduation rate here in the city of St. Petersburg, and I would like to institute more pre-K intervention, child care, preschool opportunities in the city of St. Petersburg. We know that our private prison systems are calculating how many new beds based on the number of third graders, and that's just wrong. And I think waiting until kids are ready for kindergarten to begin to intervene is too late. I think we need to really hustle and start reaching our children earlier and giving them the support they need so that they can succeed in kindergarten and thereon. I think it's absolutely critical that we look at economic development. And again, that begins with education. But I have to tell you that I'm a little bit concerned when folks don't support the existing jobs that we have. And to lose 450 jobs and close 28 businesses when it really wasn't necessary is really a darn shame. And I think we have to really think carefully about what we're doing in the city of St. Petersburg, because it does have real impacts. And I would say that one, two, three. The other issue would, of course, be looking to the future. And we do have a wonderful medical complex and a wonderful marine complex. And having worked in a major medical center that was the economic driver for Houston, Texas, I have a few ideas about what we need to do to grow that. And adult care really is a component that we need to really address and support wherever we can. And I'm a little bit concerned. I hear that HMA now is a potential target for takeover. So we have to be careful now that there are partners at Bayfront to make sure that our interests are still being served. And that begins with leadership, and I think what's critical is that we have a new leader. Thank you.
Tell us about your top 5 and the one most particular thing that's a home run on all 5.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna talk about 4 initially and circle back to 5, because I think if you do all 4 well, you'll get to number 5. So let me start with neighborhoods. And I mentioned it initially in my speech, but we've got to get back to what made us special in having neighborhoods and having strong, vibrant neighborhoods. Funding for Neighborhood Partnership Grant Program is critical. Aside from the fact that it helps you beautify your neighborhood, it gets people working together again to really be a community. That's what a neighborhood is. It's really a community. We've got to do that, and we also need to look at codes and code enforcement. If we're going to keep our neighborhoods looking beautiful and get everybody encouraged to maintain them, we've got to have a good, strong, efficient codes department. Second issue is education, and this is a real passion of mine. We've got to have not only the best schools in Pinellas County, but St. Pete needs to have the best schools in the state of Florida. When Mayor Baker was mayor, there was a real focus on education, and I think it was because he recognized how much of an impact education has on crime and how much it has on economic development. Something that's very important, it's a bill that I passed in the legislature that I want to see start in elementary school all the way through high school, is something called service learning, which integrates community service directly into the curriculum. It empowers kids. You get higher graduation rates, better grades, lower behavior problem. It changes the environment in the classroom. Number 3, crime. We've talked about we need to go back to community policing, but we need to have a restructuring of our police department. It's one thing for the police to require respect from the community, but there needs to be respect that goes back to the community. And I think we need to take a look at how we're running our police department, the programs that we've got, from the chase policy to jumping in front of cars and shooting into them.
Thank you, Kennedy. Candidate Foster?
I want to take 2 minutes to, I'm sorry?
5 keys and the 1 home run on all 5.
Well, this one's easy, because I'm going to talk all about education, and we agree on the importance of education. Education is economic development. It is the ability to buy a house. It's that workforce housing, that affordable housing. It's job creation. It's all of these things, and it is public safety. If you think about it, if you do well in education, all of these other things fall into place. Now, there's a big difference between talking about it conceptually and actually doing it. Now, as the mayor for the past 3.5 years, I've had 3 superintendents. I inherited Julie Jensen. I worked with John Stewart when he was here. And now we have Dr. Michael Gregor. This is a man that is passionate about education. And next week I'm going to announce, and you're going to get a little quick taste of it, but I'm going to announce that we're entering into agreements with the Pinellas County School System and the Pinellas Education Foundation to actually do all of these things that we've been doing as far as doorway scholarship, mentors, corporate sponsors, and things like that. But we're going to have at City Hall employees of the school system and the Ed Foundation, because it's all about giving kids hope and that opportunity for a college education or that opportunity for vocational training. It's also about partnerships with our university systems and making sure that the curriculum is being taught at USF St. Pete College at Eckerd, that their curriculum is designed by Jable, home shopping and things like that. So when the kid signs up for the home shopping curriculum, there's a job waiting for them. I'm talking to college graduates asking me if I want to supersize that order. That can't happen. So education, the sun rises and sets on education. There's a difference between talking about it and actually making these partnerships happen to where there's a real impact. And it's happening now as we speak. And it's probably the most important thing as we go forward in the next 4 years.
Thank you. Now I'd like to congratulate all 3 candidates. You've just been elected mayor. What you going to do now? I'd like for you to share with us your mission, core values, and vision for the city of St. Petersburg. What do we see you doing in the first 100 days after election? Candidate Kriseman.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I announced at a press conference that I was going to be doing right after getting elected was to reform a new task force to take a look at the peer issue. And that presupposes a vote, so we'll have to see what happens in the vote, but assuming that is what happens, that is the first step that we will be taking, is to put that task force together. The group that surrounds me, your cabinet, who you have working for you, says a lot about who you are and what you believe in, as does the budget. It sets forth what your values are, what your beliefs are, what's important to you, and who you are as a community. So it's time that we started focusing our budget back into those areas that are important to this community, like our neighborhoods, like after-school programs for kids, like summer employment programs for kids, like crime, and economic development. And I want to focus on taking the Dome Industrial area, which has been vacant for a very long time. We've done a great job of gathering the land up, but we're turning businesses away. I want to focus on bringing businesses to the Dome Industrial. I don't care that they're not 500 or 1,000 employers. I'll take 10, 50 employer businesses. And let's grow those into 100, because if we lose one of those, it doesn't destroy our economy. If we lose that 500 employer, we feel it here in the economy. We've got to start working on growing our economy, and that's got to be job one from day one. Thank you.
First of all, my core value is honesty. I think it's really important that people tell the truth. And if we don't all tell the truth, then we really can't go too much further than that. And we all make mistakes, but for me, that's a pretty core value, and that will be a mark of my administration. The other thing is, I think as public servants, we are committed to service. And I think the taxpayers, the citizens, the businesses here in St. Petersburg, they are our #1 customer, and that is something that will be the hallmark of my administration, because we know who pays our paycheck. And I think that's really important. I think in my first 100 days, I will be gathering everybody around me and evaluating the staff to see who shares my vision of where I want to take this city. And we know that we have to restore our commitment to our neighborhoods. We have to restore our commitment to our business districts. We've got to do something about the challenges we face, losing Sweet Bay, for example, at the Tangerine Plaza. We've got to make sure that Deuces is successful. We've got to make sure that 16th Street not only looks nice with the wonderful palm trees, but that we really have the economic development that was going on there that we really envisioned. MLK, we've seen some growth there. We need to continue to encourage that. Of course, it's interesting to see how much the Edge District has come along, Grand Central Avenue. And it's exciting to see what's going to happen with 34th Street. I want to make sure we have a business coordinator, developer who's really looking at all of our business districts and has the staff in place to monitor each one of them to make sure they're all successful. And let's get ahead of the problems. Let's not read about it in the newspaper or at a press conference. And I also think it's really important that we look at how all of our city services are integrated together. I think teamwork really works well. I've seen it successful way back in the 90s when we had codes, sanitation, neighborhood partnership, and everybody else working together.
Well, my first 100 days will be just like the 100 days before that, because it'll be seamless. I mean, you are hiring the CEO, the chief executive of your city. And while others will have a learning curve, and I got to tell you, I'm an attorney. I went to school to be a city manager in public administration. This job is the toughest job I've ever had. And it is those 12 and 14-hour days. It is breakfast with the mayor at 7 a.m. or mayor's night out in the community listening to you and making sure that you're surrounded by staff to take care of any challenge that you may have. But it is a real kick in the pants. This is not an area where on-the-job training, I think, is going to be the best move as we go forward and as we start getting out of this recession. I have in my office 2 or 3 big whiteboards. And as I sit there and I think about what we need to do and how we vision and what I've heard from you in the community, I'm always working on this whiteboard. And then as we get one off, I can erase it and add to it. But it is about jobs, jobs, jobs for everyone. It is about economic development. It is about affordable housing. So for the first 100 days, I'm going to work the same way I have for the past 3.5 years. Those 10, 12, 14-hour days. I'm going to be in the community. And I'm going to be working with staff to make sure that we continue to build on our successes and take this momentum as we go forward. I mean, I love to hear compliments from my challengers about the Edge and Grand Central and all of these things that are happening in the city that happened on my watch. So these are very positive things. We have momentum. And so the next 100 days, we're not going to miss a beat. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. All three candidates, now that you've been elected mayor, and now that you've slated the first 100 days, at the end of your days in your term as mayor, when you've gone the last mile of your way, what will be the one major accomplishment that history will say of you, candidate Kriseman?
Great question, and it is one that I've thought about it. I think that the thing that, in my mind, would have the biggest impact on this community is to make a positive change, to bring business, to change the environment, to change the perception of Midtown and South St. Pete. For as long as I can remember being living in St. Pete, being on city council, being in state government, there's always been that perception that you don't cross Central Avenue if you live on one side to the other. It's not safe. If you move into South St. Pete, there's no place to go to eat. You can't find a restaurant, you can't find a shop, you can't find retail stores. That has to change. That's the one thing. If we change that, we change this community forever. And that's the one thing that I want to change.
Thank you, candidate.
Well, at the end of my days, I would like to see a vibrant waterfront with the whole community pleased and happy with whatever is on the waterfront where the pier is today. And I think that will be symbolic, hopefully, of a community that is united. Obviously, the pier is not the only thing that defines the city of St. Petersburg. But we know that if we don't get that right, we're not going to have the money to do the other things we need to do, which includes preschool programs, which includes education, neighborhoods, community policing, economic development, working business development. Those things are all important, and we need our entire community working together to do just that. That's my vision.
Thank you, candidate.
At the end of my 8 years as mayor, we're going to have a pier. I can guarantee you these things. We're going to have a pier. The Rays will be at Tropicana Field. But the number one thing that I want to see at the end of 8 years is that we increase the number of great passing schools. These DNF schools are killing our community. And we have to increase student achievement. We have to decrease the achievement gap, especially in African American males. And we can do it with hope. Our doorway scholars, these young people that we identify in the 6th grade, and we partner up with a mentor, and we track them and we follow them all the way through graduation. The graduation rate of our doorway scholars is 93%. We can do better, and it's going to take all of us to do it. But, so the legacy that I want to leave behind, no more failing schools. We have these passing schools, the graduation rates are high, and that we can adopt these programs to where kids can go into college-bound or vocational training. But at the end of the training, there are jobs waiting for them at the end of the line. We've got to get our kids, we've got to save them now, and they have to be able to work.
Thank you, sir. Now we come to the open forum part of the program. This is where you have a chance to ask the questions of the candidates that you want answered for yourself, for your organization, and for the city. I'm going to ask you to please, if you have a question, to step to the microphone, and we'll take you in sequence. I would ask you to keep the question itself to 2 minutes and to form it as a question as opposed to a statement. Let's take about 5 at a time, and then so we won't block the view corridor for everybody else, and then we'll take the next 5 up. Mr. Tanton.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. My question is directed to you, Mayor Foster. An article appeared in the Tampa Bay Times suggesting that you have a credibility problem. It was a well-written piece by a very talented reporter by the name of Mark Puente. Oh, there he is. Now, you touched on some concerns when you were asked to identify things that you have done in the community for the underserved people in our community. But when you responded, you talked about the previous administration's things that they have done. I'm aware, Mayor Foster, of a list that you put out suggesting 25 top foster facts. After reading that and sharing it with a number of people, there were some real serious concerns about the top 25 foster facts. One of which, did you find the first tenant for the Manhattan Casino? Did you find the first tenant for the Manhattan Casino? And did you do the improvements to Child's Park? Did you do those improvements? Did you pay attention to the improvement plan for Child's Park? And I'll just leave it at that because I know I don't have time for you to respond to 25 facts. But there are a lot of concerns about what you put out, suggesting what you have done.
Thank you. Kathleen Foster, you have 2 minutes.
I don't know that you find anything. Now, when you read news reports and things like that, you get blamed for a lot of stuff that you didn't do. So when things happen on your watch, and when tenants come in, negotiating a lease with, or this long-term agreement with Larry Newsom and UDS, to bring in Sylvia's of Harlem, but to make sure that we didn't give away this asset of the city called Manhattan Casino, but we negotiated properly. Did I find Sylvia's of Harlem? No. But when they come into my office, these are things that have to go through the mayor's office to get accomplished. I mean, did I find a charter school that wants to come in and take over Southside Fundamental? No, I didn't go to Kansas City and find them. But when Dr. Davis came into my office and he said, will you let them use this land next to Enoch Davis in the library, and will you be an advocate for this? I said, absolutely, I'm in. It doesn't happen without that. So did I find it? No, I didn't find them. But you negotiate on behalf of the city to make sure that the taxpayer's interest is served and that the asset comes in. The second one was Child's Park. Did I complete? Did it happen on my watch when all of these renovations took place? It absolutely did. So I'm not taking credit. Some plans are in place. Did I make sure that the funding was available in the CIP to make sure that these things were accomplished and enhanced? Absolutely I did. That's what mayors do.
This is a question for all 3 of you. My question, we've had a red light camera program in the city for about a year, and it was recently discovered that several intersections were faulty. The yellow light time was too quick. Should the people that were ticketed at those intersections be fully refunded?
Candidate Kriseman?
That's a good question. Obviously, if you've got traffic signals that have been altered and they are not functioning as they're supposed to, the timing's been changed, I have a problem with that. And that goes to the core of what the purpose of red light cameras is supposed to be about. And the question is it about money or is it about safety? My history on these cameras is pretty well known. I've been supportive of cameras solely from the standpoint of safety. I could care less about the money. So if you're changing timing of traffic signals, I have a problem with that. If you are ticketing ambiguously on red, right on red, I have a problem with that. If it's about safety, it's about safety. If it's about revenue, it's a problem.
Thank you. Candidate Ford.
Yes.
Candidate Foster.
Our yellow light times have been in compliance with very few exceptions with FDOT standards. Should we refund monies? No. Do I think that these red light camera devices modify behavior? Absolutely. Guess what? I wasn't a chronic red light runner, but every once in a while it happens and you go, oh, and you might say something under your breath. Guess what? I don't do that anymore. I anticipate that yellow light. I don't tailgate. It actually caused me to read the Florida Driver's Handbook to make sure what a proper distance was between that car in front of me. It's distracted drivers that kill people. And if these devices can modify behavior enough to save one life, you know what? It's worth it. Right-hand revs, you get 12 miles an hour and under, and it's all yours, even though the handbook says you should stop. But if you're going over 12 miles an hour, you're going to get a ticket. You know what? I worry about my kids, I worry about T-bone accidents, and I worry about a lot of things. Do they work? They absolutely do work. And so we're going to keep them as long as we're able to do that. We're going to comply with FDOT standards. We have a new system in place thanks to the legislature that will allow us to be more equitable when notice of violations come out versus when they actually get a uniform traffic citation. So we're fixing that issue to make sure that equity is built into the system. And honestly, I don't care about the money. I care about careless behavior and distracted drivers. And so when you anticipate that light, it changes behavior and it saves lives. And it might be my kid's life.
Thank you, candidate.
Hello, candidates. My question is for Candidate Foster. Candidate Foster, on August 29th, 2011, I attended a session at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church where you spoke. You were introduced by Terry Scott, as a matter of fact. You indicated in that session that you accepted Christ in 1970 and that, quote, being in the house of the Lord, I'm going to be honest. That's what you told us as we sat there. So tonight, I've heard you list a whole cadre of accomplishments, and I just want to ask you, to what extent are you essentially basically piggybacking or taking credit for things that happened prior to your administration? For example, homelessness. The blueprint for that was laid by Rick Baker. I worked with him, so I know. The legislation was written by Rick Baker. The prototype was New Hope Village that you modeled yours after. Baker gave you very well filled plate. St. Pete College, the first building is still there. We started negotiating for the larger building prior to your appointment. Granted that you finished the negotiations after we were there. The Manhattan Casino basically started long before you were there, as been indicated. It was dead in the water until Councilmember Newton and Leslie Curran fought to bring it back. You rejected the idea. Jamestown Housing was slated to be sold again until Councilmember Newton and Leslie Curran fought to have it redone. The greenhouse does away with Midtown Economic Development and bring in your initiative. So I will give you that, but it's also a retraction on what was already done. You did change the chase policy that's resulting in the shootings and so forth that we have there. So I'm just going to ask you very bluntly, is it true that you did all of these things, or were you basically in the chair when it came to fruition? You may have done some ceremonial things, you may have done some other things, but the fact is, back to Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, you're not in the house of God tonight, but I'm going to finish my question. Your comment was you're going to tell the truth.
2 minutes. Candidate Foster.
Well, I did negotiate the lease with St. Pete College. I am working with Commissioner Welch to establish the Midtown CRA. I budgeted $250,000 for summer youth every time. Working with FAST, established Fair's Project, Manhattan Casino. Nobody brought them back. The original RFP proposal was ridiculous, and you were even there. They wanted to take the Manhattan Casino out of the hands of the people, and that was not a part of the deal. That was not compliant with the RFP, and you know that. So we made them go back, sharpen your pencil, bring in a better proposal. And when they brought it back the second time, it was a lot better. I'm going down this list, yeah, I'm gonna stand by every single thing. I even work closely with the U.S. Postmaster and Congresswoman to save the Midtown Post Office. There was a lot to do about very little when it came to that post office. I had already met with the postmaster of this area, and we had already figured out how we were going to save the Midtown Post Office long before the press conference and long before it gathered a lot of steam. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I do in that chair that you have no idea what I do in that chair.
I was in that office.
Dr. Davis, I'm going to call you, I'm going to
All
call
I'm
you
going to
for
say
time.
is that
and
I won't
protocol.
argue these points with you, but everything that I mentioned is verifiable.
Thank you so much.
Me too.
Take a breath. Jim Jackson, South St. Pete, and I really am happy to call all three of you my friends. And when I look at you, you have a number of things in common. Obviously, you're candidates for the mayor of this city. You're all white, you're all attorneys, you're all parents. The Supreme Court has been on a tear this week, and they, in fact, have had some decisions that will affect many of us in this land. If you would comment on each one of the three that I'm going to mention and say which side you would be on and why. The Voters' Rights Act, where they gutted the Voters' Rights in 1965. The act where they sent the appeal of Prop 8 back to California, essentially establishing marriage equality in California, and the repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act, which has a whole lot of parts to it.
Candidate Ford.
The Voting Rights Act I spoke about earlier, and I'm disappointed that the Supreme Court ruled the way it did in that very close decision, because I would have rather have seen Congress come up with a solution first before the pre-clearance was removed, because I just don't think this Congress is going to do anything about it. Repealing DOMA was wonderful, and I'm certainly in favor of repeal of the Defense Against Marriage Act, because it's just, we need to move forward. Prop 8 back to California, that one I don't understand. It's more of a standing issue that the court was looking at, didn't want to get involved in the middle, or did not recognize the petitioners as having standing, as I understand it. It's been so interesting to see how our entire society has moved forward in this area, because I think it's a human right, and that's where I would like to see us go. I just can't imagine, as a lawyer, and I primarily practice in the area of real estate, but in looking at that particular area of law, when you consider how you're going to deal with the best interest of the child, for example, in family law, it seems to me that we should have one body of law, not a body of law for family law under folks who are married, and a body of family law under civil union. That just would be a dual system that just makes no sense whatsoever. But I'm excited because it's a good first step.
Can't say I was shocked by the Supreme Court's decision on the Voting Rights Act. I wish I had been shocked and they would have done what they did. But kind of was expecting that, and it's unfortunate. We ought to be doing everything we can in this country to make it as easy as possible for people to have access to vote. And it's one of the things that frustrates me right now in this city, where we don't have early voting for this election for mayor and city council. Having said that, I was shocked and surprised pleasantly by the court's decision on DOMA. Based on what happened the day before, I expected to see a ruling that just followed that kind of line, and that it wasn't going to get overturned. So that was a wonderful surprise. Honestly, I'm not as familiar with Prop 8, and I'd want to read more about it before I can comment. But I will say that it's nice to see the court doing that. It would be nice to see our state following suit. Our city certainly recognizes the importance of diversity. I think it's one of the things that makes this community so special, is that we get it. We are tolerant, we are welcoming to everyone. And that is what makes St. Pete special, and it makes it unique in the state.
Candidate Foster.
It says in there that you are to submit to authority. And that's been one of the greatest peace things in my own mind, because the legislature is my authority. The city council is my authority. The Supreme Court is also my authority. So I support the Supreme Court and their decisions. They are the law of the land. I support equality. We celebrate our diversity. I support states' rights. Whatever California does as it goes back to them, I wish them well. And I think others should follow our lead, as I supported the domestic rights ordinance, or the domestic partner ordinance that came into the city, the registry. As I supported benefits to all employees without regard to sexual orientation, because I thought that was important. Because we have police officers, firefighters, parks and recreation workers, sanitation workers, and all they want to do is live peacefully in their life and love who they choose to love. So I think I have a history. You can judge me on my record of that. Thank you.
Next question.
Good evening. Quickly coming to mind, I can think of 3 fairly racist policies that I think a courageous mayor could probably push back and alleviate some of the damage being done to the people in St. Pete. First one is Governor Scott's felony disenfranchisement policies. It has almost 25% of the black population in St. Petersburg barred from voting. Would you be willing to let all citizens in St. Pete vote on city matters? Second one, we have police officers stationed in our schools. Historically, that tends to increase the likelihood of minorities going to prison, not going to higher education. Would you be willing to consider putting veterans in their place? Next, marijuana prohibition was racist in its inception, and it's unfortunately racist in its enforcement right now. In St. Pete, it's a 5-to-1 arrest disparity ratio of blacks versus whites, which is 20% worse than the national average. 90% of Americans don't even believe that should be a jail offense anymore. Other cities in Florida have established a civil non-criminal citation, both for adults and for children. Would you be willing to establish that quickly in St. Pete and possibly make marijuana prohibition their lowest law enforcement priority?
Thank you. Is that addressed to all candidates?
All.
Candidate Kriseman?
Great questions. As I indicated, and I think I've said a couple times, whatever we need to do to try and expand voting and make it as accessible and easy for our citizens, I think is what we ought to be looking at doing. The fact that we only have 10-15% turnout on elections is sad. If you look at other countries like Australia, where it's mandatory, and they have 95% turnout. So we need to take steps, and I'd even consider looking at making it a holiday for city employees on election day, so that we make sure people have an opportunity to vote. As far as police officers and schools go, you know, I am concerned about the direction that we've been going. You know, in light of some of the violence that we've seen in schools, there tends to be an overreaction, and we talk about more officers, and we talk about even arming teachers with weapons, which I think is insane. So we need to look at common sense approaches. It would be nice to have common sense actually back in government for a change. And that goes to your third question, which deals with marijuana and going to civil citations. You know, once a child has a misdemeanor on their record, it makes it, and has been arrested, it makes it difficult for them to get a job. It makes it difficult to get into college. It makes it difficult to have a future. If we can redirect and give that young person an opportunity to make a change in their life and not destroy their life by putting them a record, whether it's the arrest or it's a misdemeanor, it's something we ought to give a really hard look at doing, and I'm really excited about the idea of doing that.
Trying to remember your questions. I think yes on the voting, and I'm all in favor of the early voting, and especially the system that we have where you can have, I think that's up to 45 days, you can go to 3 locations in the county and actually cast a real ballot. I mean, a real ballot. The only difference between what what Mr. Kriseman wants to do and what we are already doing is you put that ballot into an envelope and you hand to the supervisor to be scanned on election night versus actually running it through a scanner then. So, yeah, we have early voting, and I'm very much in favor of that. Vets in schools, the community police officers that we have is in conjunction with the contract we have with the Pinellas County School System. If there is a program that puts incredible veterans who have sacrificed everything for our freedom into schools to mentor, to protect, to be eyes and ears, I would love a program like that. I would love to have our officers literally out there on the streets building relationships with kids and business owners and Empower and all of these other things that our incredible police officers do. Any legalization of marijuana, that's a deal killer for me. Thank you.
Candidate 4.
I think your first question had to do with the disenfranchisement policy for felons. And I think whatever we can do to restore rights to those who have served their time, I think is appropriate. If folks have served their time and they have been rehabilitated, then they should have their rights restored. Secondly, with respect to the school resource officers, I agree that it seems to me that there are an awful lot of kids who have felony records, and I think Wingate Newton, you are the biggest educator about those sorry facts of over 1,100 kids in 7 months were arrested and in Pinellas County, or the city of St. Pete, 1150 in St. Pete in 7 months, and that's an awful way to start. And I kind of share the story. My mom's, I'm sure, eavesdropping in heaven, but when she was in high school, she and her buddies would go out and tip outhouses. Do you know that'd be probably a felony? I mean, today. And that's what I think folks will say back then. Wait, you know what we used to do, boy, we'd have been arrested. And I think that's what has happened. And there's a very unfortunate consequence, and that is that they do have a record, and that it's awfully hard to dig out of that hole. People make mistakes. We kind of expect that with adolescents. Their brains are changing. These hormones are going all off. They're giggling 1 minute, they're tears the next, and they're growing up. And so I think we've got to figure out a better way to do that. The marijuana prohibition, that's an awful disparity, 5 to 1 in the arrest. I have concerns about drug use, but I know how well marijuana works for folks who have cancer. And so it has beneficial properties. I don't like to see kids high. I don't want something that gives anybody the impression that it's okay, it's just a whatever. But I think we've got to look at that because we do know the consequence of having a record. So I would certainly consider it.
Thank you.
Next question, sir.
My question is to Mayor Bill Foster, and I wanted to say that I've been reading the Bible, Bill, and remind me of Peter, and it's like I want you to kind of think, you know what I'm saying, what is you going to do for the South Side. I heard a lot of things that you done did, and I'm on the South Side every day, and some people don't even know we got to marry. You know what I'm saying? Just the people that work for you, you know what I'm saying? You like a bully, you know what I'm saying? So they got to kind of support you. They know you because you signed a check. But the rest of the community, you know what I'm saying, where I stay at, where I live, it's like, you know what I'm saying, who is the mayor? You know what I'm saying? And Peter was the kind of guy like, you know, that denied people, you know what I'm saying, when you get under pressure, you know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to figure out, we need a strong mayor because that's what we voted for. And I want to know the next 4 years, is you going to be a strong mayor and face questions and answer them and, you know what I'm saying, and stop being phony and lying, you know what I'm saying, and be real. You know, and that's, you know, if you answer that for me, that'll kill a lot of, you know what I'm saying, things that really just been eating me up. So, you know what I'm saying, if you can answer that, and you 100.
Thank you. Candidate Foster.
I indeed intend to be your strong mayor for the next 4 years.
Thank you. Next question.
I am Mama T. Lassiter. I am the grassroots community activist. 3 candidates, none of you have served as I have. What the mayor has done, this year we'll be celebrating our 10th year with the Law Fest Workshop. You came 1 year when you was on council. You brought your kids so you would have an excuse to leave. You never returned. You came one time when you was running for office. But every year, we have Teresa Cole Jones there, where they see 75 people to help them get their rights restored. I personally write business plans. I have personally worked with the Coast Department. And everybody seen me want to bash the mayor tonight. Has he done everything right? No. When he fired Goliath, I told him he was wrong. But you know what? The day before he fired Goliath, I met with Goliath. I bought him dinner at Outback. We talked about the death of my mother, and I begged him to go. Now, Bill, he was caught in the same mess Obama. He inherited someone else's mess. We came into a recession. And then for Eric to go on, and we know what it's all about, but the devil is a lie. I want to ask y'all, I know what I've been doing. Kriseman, to you, I need to know what bill you passed, because I followed you. And my brother Darryl Rousson, he was making it work and bringing the money home. I never saw you move anything for it. So you need to tell me what bill and what you did and what have you done since you came from Tallahassee. Kathleen, real simple. You're talking about the Weeding Island. 10 years, you've never participated. What have you done on the south side? And what I have a problem with, Goldman over, I'm gonna finish my sentence. When you was running against Bill the last time, you used the phrase, head nigger in charge. I can't remove that from my head. But then now, you got his support.
Mama T, thank you. We have your two questions.
I put all your business in the street. I'm an open book.
Thank you so much.
I don't hold with nobody.
Candidate Price.
Let me go soak the
All right,
cigarette.
first session.
Jesus, got me tonight. Huh? He's appropriation. I don't need to hear it, because it ain't gonna be nothing but another lie.
Mama T.
We got serious problems.
Listen now, this is
That's why I'm going out
NAACP
tonight.
Weekly Challenger event. Listen, yourself and everybody else included, we're not gonna have it. We're not gonna have that. Now, anybody else do it? Anybody else do it? I'm gonna ask the officers of trespassing. This is a forum. This is not a candidate bashing, nor a time where you're gonna, try to lift someone's. They're here to speak for themselves, okay? And whether you like them or you don't like them, respect them. But more importantly, respect us. You got 2 minutes, that's it. Make it quick, formulate it in your mind, write it down if you need to, but you will not do that here.
Thank you. One of the question was what have I done in the legislature during my time there? And for anyone who follows the legislature, whether you do or you don't, if you're in the minority party, which I was as a Democrat, where there were 39 Democrats and 81 Republicans, you learn a very quick lesson, and that is if you speak your mind, if you speak out for what's right, if you try and stand up for people, your bills will die. So you have a choice to make sometimes, and it's, do you pass bills and keep your mouth shut, or do you stand up and try and say what's right and what's wrong and speak out for people who don't have a voice? That's what I did. So most of my bills all died because I didn't care about my bills passing if it meant I got to speak up for people and talk out about what's not happening up there that should be happening and how it affects people back home here. I did pass a couple bills though. One of them was service learning, which I talked about a little bit, which puts community service into the curriculum, and it helps kids. If you talk to kids who have been through service learning programs, it changes their lives. It is impactful on them. I also passed a bill to try and make our streets safer so that when you're walking in the crosswalk, instead of traffic yielding the right of way, which who knows what that means, I guess it means they're going to slow down before they hit you, they now have to stop. Because we need to make our streets safer for our kids, we need to make them safer for all of us so that we can walk the streets safe, we can ride our bikes safe, and we can have a safe community. That's what I did while I was up in Tallahassee.
Since I've been in the private sector, I think I mentioned to you all a little bit earlier, that I have been volunteering with James Weldon Johnson, Friends of the Library, because I think literacy is really important, and we do have to make sure that our kids get a good start in school, stay in school, so that they are successful. And I think the way to do that is through encouraging reading. That's one way. Of course, you all know that I've been involved with trying to get the citizens of St. Petersburg a vote on the pier. Single greatest project in the city of St. Petersburg. I've been working on that for several years, and you'll be happy to know, as we looked at where those petitions came from, that they came from all over the city. Citizens in this city really care about the future, and we understand that if we waste money today, that's money that we can't use for those things that we think are important for tomorrow, like neighborhood improvement, like business district improvement, like monitoring and making sure that those programs that we put into place on 16th Street, down in Tangerine Plaza, on the Deuces, that they're really working. If we don't have the money to put the people in place to monitor those programs, it's not going to be successful. And I'm committed to doing that. I've also, as I've said before, I've been working very hard to make sure that we stay on top of the voter suppression efforts here in the state of Florida. Since 2000, I've been working with a group of lawyers statewide, where our goal is to have a lawyer in every one of the busy precincts. So back in November, during the general election, from 6:30 in the morning until 8:30 at night, I was a precinct poll watcher. And we still were one of the last states to fill in our records. Pinellas County did pretty well, but it was the rest of the state that kept us from shining at the national level. And voting rights are very, very important. It all begins there. And that's why I'm so passionate about the pier. I'm very much interested in you having.
I think we will. We actually are closer than people think. But she represented a group headed up by Tom Lambden and busted their humps to get petition signatures and took it to city council. Now, I wish she had done it right. I wish she wrote a question that could have been recognized by the court. And I wish the signatures were obtained according to the charter. And I think we all wish that. I wish it were on the November presidential ballot when you had 90% voter turnout. I wish all of these things were true. And under the city charter, successful petition drives, properly done, and city council, those are the only two ways to get something on the ballot. So in August 2nd, I made these proposals to the city council. Put this on the ballot. And if we have to clean up the question, we'll clean it up. But you need a mandate and you need 90% voter turnout. Put it on the ballot. Council voted 62 against it. And so the second group that came, Stop the Lens, they did it right. And so I'm so happy that you get the chance to vote on August 27th. Because your right to vote in that is very important. And I see Representative Russo in the back. Now, I just led the city through a recession, and you didn't hear me making excuses about I'm a Democrat and all of these. Representative Rousseau's a Democrat. But guess what? It's about relationships, it's about bringing people to the table, it's about temperament, and Representative Rousseau makes no excuses. He brings things to St. Pete.
Thank you so much. Our next question.
My name is Lorraine Brown, and I live on the South St. Pete. And this question is for all three of you, mainly for you, Paul and Ford. It's been said in our community that the black people on the South Side vote because and not for a cause. I'm one of those that vote for a cause. I see a lot of your signs in places that the last 2 years never would have been there. And I want to know why. These signs in the neighborhood where people was against you, what is different now about you? And the other ones I would like to know why I should, Mayor, why I should vote for you. And you, who I don't know that much, but I have seen in the city council. I'm one of the solid ones that look like and listen. So why should I?
Thank you so much.
And tell me your name again.
Lorraine Brown.
Ms. Brown, thank you so much. I'm really thrilled with the support that I've received. And I had a lot of support in the last time that I ran. As you know, it was a very, very close race. And I think folks are pretty much the same in a lot of neighborhoods. They just want a safe home, they want a safe school, they want their kids to grow and develop, they want to have an opportunity to enjoy beautiful St. Pete, they want to feel safe wherever they go, and they want the opportunity to grow, develop, and spend all of their time, as much time as they want with their families, and really enjoy what we have here in St. Petersburg. And I think folks are beginning to understand that I get that too, and that I really do care about making sure that everybody succeeds. And I've actually been in the trenches and have worked with neighbors in trying to address those issues that we know are critical to the quality of life. I've been a neighborhood association president, I've gone to countless meetings, I've worked with city staff, so I have a pretty good idea of how it's supposed to work, and I'm committed to doing it. And folks know that I kind of do what I say I'm going to do. And when I say I think it's an important issue and I'm going to take a stand for you, I do. And I think it's important that folks feel comfortable that I will stand for you and I'm there to help you. And I really consider it a privilege to serve as your next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The reason I'm running for mayor is I want to bring this community back together to unite us as one. And I also want to be someone who solves problems. It's easy to point out things that aren't working, but that's not leadership. It's problem solving. Another thing I think that in 12 years of public service that I've gained a reputation for is I'm somebody who's willing to listen, to learn, and then to take a position and lead. You know, and you have to understand when you're the leader that you're not going to make everybody happy. It's impossible to do that. But you have to be willing to take a position. You have to let people know what that position is. And you also have to be willing to allow people to convince you that their position may be better, and be willing to change your position if they're able to convince you of that. And that's what leadership to me is about, and that's why I hope to not only have your support, but the support of the rest of the folks here.
Thank you so much.
Great question. I've been active in this city since 1998. I spent 10 years on the city council. I ran for mayor because I had a vision and I understood what it took to bring people together, to form relationships, to be open and transparent, and to be in the community, not just of it, but in it. And I've spent the last 3.5 years working my tail off during all of these economic times. And again, no excuses, but making sure that we were postured for this future. And now the future is here, and we're seeing, this resurgence in economic development and job creation. And it's going to get better. And I think as we continue to go forward and we look at what the CRA is going to mean and what rediscovering the Deuces is all about, and the African American Heritage Trail, giving people this education and excitement of their heritage, I think you're going to see this continued resurgence of the community coming together. And all I can say to you is, if you think we are better after going through this recession and coming out, and that you think the city's going in the right direction, then you need to keep me on as your mayor. But honestly, if you don't, then fire me.
Thank you so much.
Real quick, I want to get the facts right. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned a number when it came to economic development and reconstruction. What was that again? 500 million. Okay. Here's what my question is, and we did somewhat too fast. As a mayor, you have some unilateral authority with respect to contracts and how they're distributed. With $500 million coming in, you have between now and November to say what you're going to do to make sure that the black community, is able to benefit small business and individual workers and apprentices, because one of the groups that was left out of this negotiation was our unions, and we're trying to correct that now. But with that kind of construction going on, it can easily go to contractors outside, and then the local community don't get a piece of that, and it's not going to affect our unemployment rate. What are you going to do unilaterally, to the best of your ability, to make sure that money is distributed into the community that needs it the most?
I think we're talking about two different numbers, and the 500 million, and the beauty of that 500 million in new construction is it's private investment on private property. And that private developer can hire anybody they choose, as long as they pay the impact fees, as long as they get the permits and do the inspections and things like that. But what I think is the primary focus is, what are we doing with your money? As stewards of your money, as the city builds up here, as the city spends $40 million plus on a new police station, as we spend your tax dollars for capital improvements, how can we take care of the local hires? And that's exactly what you and I, pastors, members of FAST, members of the Urban League, members of the construction industry, are working on right now to incentivize these contractors using retainage to do local hiring. And I believe that will work, because you and I have talked a lot about this. If the contractors don't buy into it, then nothing changes. But if we craft an ordinance that incentivizes them and to where we can get these cash incentives up front, this retainage into their pockets quicker to help their cash flow, then it works for everybody. But as a steward of your taxpayer dollars, we control that. 500 million in private dollars from outside the community, that's huge.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for your efforts with FAST. The efforts that FAST has undertaken for hiring local are to be applauded in this community. We're spending money on these construction projects, and we have capable, competent people in this community who could be doing the work, and they're not even getting a chance. Amen. There's a problem with that. Likewise, the fact that someone who's got a felony on their record is being disqualified from an opportunity to participate in these projects and to work on these projects is a problem. And I've heard that from walk-in neighborhoods when I have a gentleman say to me, I have a felony conviction, I want to work, nobody will hire me, I can't get a job. We have to change that, because if we don't change that, we're not going to change what's happening in this community. Those folks aren't going to have hope, they're going to go back into crime, and that's not the direction we want to go. The apprenticeship programs are very important also, because now we're giving someone an opportunity to do more beyond that project. So I applaud you. I wish it had already passed, and keep the fight up.
Patty, Ford, do you have a comment on that?
Sure, I think Bill made the distinction between private money and public money. And so for the $500,000 in new construction, private business, we're not going to be able to have any say about that at all, except with the revenues that are coming in from those buildings later, the ad valorem tax revenues, and how we spend those dollars later. That's where we can have a say. And in the past, I had worked with contractors, because as you know, part of the challenge for some of these construction contracts is to have the right bonding and insurance. And so whatever we can do to help contractors get those so that they can qualify for those jobs, I think is really important. Now, I did learn that sometimes on these bigger jobs, the bigger contractor will go and ask a subcontractor, minority subcontractor, hey, can I use your name on this project? Will you do this work for me? That contractor, subcontractor, gets paid $5,000, doesn't really do the work. And that's a real problem. So that's an issue of contract management, because I think we do need more electricians, more plumbers, carpenters, masons. And when we do our city construction, we should be looking to make sure that we are spreading that around, because I think it's critical. It's your money, and everybody should have a part of it. With respect to impact fees, I think they should be collected from everybody who owes them, and I don't think the city should be giving anybody a little waiver. So I think it's really critically important that the city of St. Petersburg, and I'm committed to this, is really manage its contracts. And we haven't really done a good job of that, frankly. We need to follow up and make sure what we ordered came in, make sure that what we asked to be done was done. And those are ways that we wisely use our money and make sure that we actually move forward and get the things done that we're supposed to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. meeting in this room went off at 9 o'clock. We had planned for everyone to be able to ask their question. If you're willing to sweat it out, we're willing to sweat it out with you, but you will be sweating, trust me. With that, we'll take the next question. We would ask you to, again, be mindful of your 2-minute limit. Be mindful of the fact that we're here to address questions and elicit responses in a respectful and time-sensitive manner. So with that, our next question.
Thank you. This is mostly for Mayor Foster, but Candidate Kriseman, I've seen you at the Pride Parades, so I'm sure you would sign the proclamation as mayor. I know you signed as councilman. Candidate Ford, you would also sign the proclamation as well. So I ask you, Mayor, in all your years as a council member, you would never sign the proclamation. 3 years as mayor, you don't sign the proclamation. Now it seems you're in a race for your life, and maybe it smells a little like you're pandering for votes. Why did you what change of heart? What got you in here, wherever, to sign the proclamation this year as mayor? It's great that the St. Pete mayor signed it. Why did you sign it, though?
That is a great question. For 3 years, I've been asked to sign a proclamation recognizing the St. Pete Pride Parade. And for 3 years, I've told the parade organizers, you know what? It's a little over the top for me. It's very adult-oriented. And I look at proclamations as kind of the mayor's housekeeping seal. And even a lot of my friends who participate in the events will agree, some of the vendors are inappropriate for young eyes. Some of the activities are inappropriate for kids. So I've said, clean it up, and you can have your proclamation. But guess what? This year, the parade organizer, the grand marshal of the parade, stopped me as I was walking out of a bathroom in Tampa and said, is there any part about this that you can support? Is there anything about the jobs, the economic development, the equality, the celebration of diversity, the celebration of life? Is there anything that you can celebrate? And I said, absolutely. I celebrate all of it. Not the parade, but all of it. That was the first time in 3 years that I was asked to sign a proclamation recognizing the impact of the community, or on the community, the heads and beds, the tourism, the celebration of diversity, of equality, which we do. It's the first time I've ever been asked to sign a proclamation recognizing something other than the parade. Great question.
My name is Leroy Lewis. I'm a resident of St. Petersburg, born and raised. I have a question for all 3 candidates. But you see my shirt, you know which way I'm going. In this economy that we have today, we know that it's very out of control. What is our greatest resources that we have today? Asking all 3 of them.
Candidate Foster, thank you.
Our greatest resource is you and everyone else there, and everyone in this room, because the answers to these challenges that we face today are in this room. That's why I have Mayor's Night Out. That's why I have breakfast with the mayor. That's why I get excited. I mean, if you handcuffed me and I couldn't talk with my hands, I couldn't speak because I get excited. Because the greatest resource we have is you. It's you mentoring a child. It's you being involved in the education of a kid. It's being a mentor at a school or a hall monitor. It's you being an example of a man for young men. Our greatest resource is in this room and is out there. People that love St. Petersburg. You are our greatest resource.
That's a great question, and it's hard to answer that in a single answer because I would agree with Mayor Foster from the standpoint that we have tremendous talent and resources in this community, made up of the community itself. But we also have tremendous resources of the small businesses that we have in our community, of our higher education schools, USF St. Pete, Eckerd College, St. Pete College, of our hospitals, All Children's, Johns Hopkins, Bayfront, and St. Anthony's, and what we haven't really tapped into yet is all of them. We haven't done a good job of tapping into you all and empowering you all to be more participatory in the city and encouraging that. We haven't tapped into our higher education schools and partnered with them to create more programs that would create jobs. We haven't partnered with All Children's and Johns Hopkins and the other hospitals to bring the medical industry into our community. We haven't partnered with our green friends, whether it's solar or battery or LED. We haven't done a good job of taking the resources we have right here in this great city and utilizing them to the fullest extent. That's what I want to do.
Thank you. Candidate Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I agree with Bill. I think our greatest resource here in the city of St. Petersburg is our people. We are caring. We do care about each other. We do care about the future for our children, for our grandchildren. We do see that there are some problems that we have, but we know that if we work together and listen to each other, we will be able to solve those problems. And some problems will be easier than others. But our greatest resource is that we're willing to sit down and talk to each other, figure out what we can agree on, work on those, and then those things that are a little bit harder to work on, eventually as we build up that goodwill, we'll be able to tackle those too. And when I look at the folks who get up every morning, go to work, take care of their families, come back, take care of extended families, take care of their homes, and then get back out and work in their communities volunteering. You know, there are so many different organizations that anybody can volunteer in the city. It's just remarkable. And I think that's a testament to people of St. Petersburg because we care. I care, you care, everybody in this room cares. And I think it's the people of St. Petersburg that is our greatest resource.
These three candidates are three of the finest people that I've ever seen. I talked with Bill. I don't know you that well, Mr. Kriseman, but we talked before. You know where you met me at? All right. And Kathleen and I, we've been knowing each other for years. But if I voted today, I wouldn't even know which way to go, but I'm going this way.
Well, thank you so much. Question, sir.
My question was pretty much answered 4 people ago, but I'm going to ask at least a question for standing in line for so long. I really want to know what really is the plan to get our communities back to the beautification that they used to be. 4 years ago, we had the mayor before you, sir. We had the flower and tree program. I worked for the city then. I was a horticultural specialist too for 4 years, and all of our communities were beautiful. We went out, in 2 months, we planted over 250, maybe 300 trees in every community, in every district. And I'm on the south side, I'm in that community, I'm in District 6. And I'm not going to say the black community because I have races, all my neighbors are different races. So what I want to know is what is really the plan to get our communities back to the way they used to look? With all this construction money, you answered it before with the private money, and you answered my question with that, but I just want to know what is the plan to get our communities back into the beautification for St. Petersburg, Florida.
Well, former Mayor Fisher's not here right now, but I know he's smiling with that question. And I said this earlier tonight, is, your budget really is the document that kind of says what your priorities and your values are and what's important to you. And what has to be decided is how much of a priority is our community and the way our community looks, the way our community feels, and the way our community functions. And you can't talk about neighborhoods if you don't invest in neighborhoods, and that includes maintaining and cleaning them. That includes making sure that the grounds that are around lakes in the neighborhoods, that are in the parks, that are well maintained. If that's the priority, that's what you have to focus on. And that goes to, the same thing goes with codes. Again, if you don't invest in that, then you don't get the result of that. So it's all about priorities. To me, it's one of the things that's always made us special as a community. we're the fourth largest city in the state, but we're also a very small community and a very special community, and we have a very unique feel to us. And some of it's the people, and some of it's the way we look. We have the most incredible park system, but if we don't maintain it, then we don't have such an incredible park system. And it's in every neighborhood, and it has to be in every neighborhood. So it's all about priorities and values, and to me it's a priority, it's got to be a value.
We used to have a neighborhood partnership program where we would leverage city dollars with the sweat equity of neighborhoods, and I would restore that program because I think we really saw amazing. And I think we should really grow that program because we were able to leverage so much. And I think it really brings neighborhoods together, and it's been something that we can really do a lot better on. So I would restore the neighborhood partnership program. And there was the team concept that we used to have where we would have somebody from sanitation who could look at perhaps having a cleanup day, so you could get the hazardous paints and all that, have a dumpster there so that everybody could very easily get rid of stuff. That works really well. Then you coordinate with street sweeping, you coordinate with sanitation coming and picking up the bigger pieces of equipment, whether it's furniture or appliances. And then, of course, you have to have codes compliance, and we really slipped in that area, and it makes a difference. And I think once these foreclosures get through and we hold some of these banks' feet to the fire, because they're the ones who are dragging down some of our neighborhoods, because they're holding off on the foreclosure sale, because the banks know once it comes into their hands, then they're responsible for all the maintenance. And I think we at the city can work a little bit harder to address some of those issues, because I think we have a beautiful city and we can make it even prettier. Thank you.
Mr. Kriseman, if you know of a park that's not being maintained, please call my action line, because that would offend me greatly. I think the city looks great. I think our parks look great. I have focused on look, smell, and feel. Now, flowering trees and things like that, not so much. Over the last 3.5 years, and going through the recession, and this isn't an excuse, this is a fact. I have focused on budgetary constraints, departmental consolidations, assessing need versus want, and for every $50,000 that we were able to save or not spend somewhere else, for every $50,000 of efficiency, that was an employee that got to keep their job. My priority was people keeping their jobs. And I don't mean supervisors. In the 3.5 years that I've been there, I've reduced management, professional, supervisor, and administration by over 50 people. So it's not that, it wasn't this top-heavy stuff, no. I wanted to make sure that the rank and file could keep their jobs. Now, as far as sanitation, yes, we absolutely prioritize look, smell, and feel. And we do have those neighborhood cleanups where sanitation will come and do those pickups and things like that. So we still work very closely with our neighborhoods, like Historic Kendrick, like Riviera Bay, like Mirror Lake. And we work with these neighborhood partners with their own sweat equity. And yeah, we pick up a lot of trash in the city. That's why our people are the #1 resource. But yeah, it has been a need versus want. Now, we're going to experience about 4% growth as we go forward. And as we see a lot of these things come online, we're going to be able to do a lot more. The previous mayor, and under those administrations, there's a $30 million reduction in ad valorem alone. 30 million, not cumulative, from under Baker to me. I could say yes, I could give you anything you want if I had $30 million.
Thank you, sir. Our next question, sir.
Good evening. I actually have a few questions, and I'm going to jump off the sanitation comment. St. Petersburg has these large dumpsters every once in a while at different events that say Florida's greenest city. But we live in a city where recycling is still optional, and that confuses me how we can be the greenest city in Florida when recycling is optional. It's $36 a year. Landfills cost money, if all that plastic isn't going to landfills, you're spending less on landfills, so why not make recycling mandatory? That's an economic issue. My second question is, my partner's parents were on a boat a few years ago, and his mother got very sick on the boat, and they called emergency services. And when they got back to land, St. Pete Emergency Services started attending to her, and they were about to get her into an ambulance, and here comes Sunstar. So they had to stop everything they were doing, and Sunstar took over. I don't understand. Every time, I had someone down the street from me who just died recently, and ambulances were there multiple times, and every time one showed up, the other one would show up, and then there seemed to be some dickering outside about who was going to take what. And it just seems like a waste of money and also a danger to the people's health. So I'd like to know what your comments on that, and also to the candidates, what your thoughts are on those two issues in particular. I also have one more quick issue.
We only have 10 minutes.
The homeless are off the corners, but now they're in the alleys dumpster diving. So you haven't got rid of the issue, you just got them out of people's eyesight.
Thank you so much. So Candidate Foster, Candidate Ford, Candidate Kriseman, 3 issues.
I mean, I could spend 3 minutes on each one of those. Mandatory recycling. I'm all about recycling. We had this voluntary program that was subscription based. We haven't found a system to where recycling breaks even. And yeah, it may only be $36 a year, but it's $36 on a sanitation customer that I'm not willing to impose upon them to make it mandatory. Now, what I did propose is that we put something like that on the ballot to see if people would spend up to $3 a month for mandatory recycling, and I told that when it got very little support from the city council at all. Now, EMS, that's an issue we haven't even touched on, and it's huge. I serve on the county's EMS task force, and I was there, and I've studied Sanford, Milliken, and IPS, and these are things that you don't have to understand. But one thing I do understand, we have a great dual response system. That's why our red trucks get there in 4.5 minutes. And we triage and we comfort and we treat. And then Sunstar is that dual response because they do the transport phase. And then so our red trucks get to go back into service while there's a transport. We don't do transport. And quite frankly, under this study that we have, I'm not sure that we need to do transport. We had the Fitch study done, and Fitch actually said that in North America, we have one of the best clinical systems anywhere in North America. And I'm very proud of that. And it might be a little expensive, and Ken Welch and I were looking at building in efficiencies, and we're working with the administrator, but that is a huge importance. Your safety, your clinical care in those first 4.5 minutes is the most important thing. And we have a great system, but it is dual response. And we're not going to compromise on response times and who responds. We're not going to get into this priority dispatch. And even the Fitch study said priority dispatch does not work.
Time.
So the red truck's going to come.
Thank you. 3 issues: homelessness, recycling, and Sunstar and EMS. 2 minutes. I'll tell you.
I helped start the initial recycling project here in St. Petersburg. When Marjorie Ruth came to me when I was neighborhood association president, we started it, and it was based on a state grant. However, the city was accepting the money and then dumping the stuff anyway. So that really killed a lot of enthusiasm for a recycling plant. I think we really need to do it, and we need to figure out how, and it's just a matter of willingness to do it. And I think we start out with a smaller neighborhood as a pilot and grow the system. With respect to EMS, transport seems to make all the money, so I'd like to see if the city of St. Petersburg can take over the transport part of it and make some money. As you all know, the EMS, the Emergency Medical Service, is a separate tax that you pay on your property taxes, and it's for emergency response. And the city and the county have an agreement where the county says, okay, you little municipalities, you cities here in Pinellas County, you all will provide that first response, the EMS response, and then we're going to contract with Sunstar to do the transportation. So I don't know that they're always bickering. They may be passing off. The EMS, the first responder, may be telling the transport, okay, we just took your vital signs, we've got a high heart rate, we've got low blah, blah, blah blood pressure, you need to do this, da, 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 da. They get in the ambulance and go to the hospital. I I think those are some areas that we can look at. I'd like to see the city make that money, frankly. But I think the county makes a lot of money, so I don't think they really want to give that up. But it's something we can look at. Homeless, I started the city's homeless task force. I think there are still some issues. There are issues with the feeding, and we were able to handle that by getting everybody to eat at St. Vincent de Paul. That program fell apart, and I think still have some concerns about why it fell apart, but I think we need to get to that, because I don't like to see people dumpster diving. That's not good for them. It's not good for the folks who are concerned about strangers in their alleys. We'll work on that.
Candy, Kriseman.
Thank you. Universal recycling, I am supportive of that. I'd certainly like to look at our sanitation system to see if there's ways of creating some efficiencies that can save us resources. Also look at tipping fees and some of the other things to try and lower costs. But I think it's kind of for the green city to be one of the few cities in this that doesn't have universal recycling. It speaks volumes. Transportation or EMS is a huge problem, as Bill was saying. You know, the public safety is our #1 responsibility as a community, and that means making sure that response times are maintained, but we have to look for avenues of cost savings. There have been a number of studies that I think certainly are worth looking into, and part of the problem is I think everybody has to be willing to come to the table and recognize that it's not sustainable the way it is right now. Between the cost that the county incurs, the cost to our citizens, we've got to find solutions. We have to be willing to come together on that issue. And it's something that hasn't been done very well between the city, not just our city, but cities in general and the county. As far as homelessness goes, we've got to be looking at best practices that are being done around the country. You've got to, in order to get at homelessness, drug addictions, mental health issues, we've got to find the resources to address those. We haven't done a very good job in this community. It's something that I want to change, of bringing resources back from Washington into the community. And a lot of that goes to relationships. I've got a lot of relationships that I built up in the last couple elections with this administration that I think will be helpful to bringing resources back in the community, because unfortunately that's what it takes to address these issues. But jobs are just as big a part of it, because even if you address mental illness and you address drug addiction, if people don't have jobs, it isn't going to make a difference.
Thank you. We have time for just one more question this evening, and we've certainly heard from you previously. So our last question of the evening.
Well, I'd like to just say on behalf of everyone here, we really appreciate all three of you offering yourselves for public service. In 2015, the city is scheduled to formulate and adopt a master waterfront plan. Assuming that the voters decide to terminate the limbs on August 28th. 27th? Thank you. Wouldn't it make sense to integrate the waterfront master plan with any plans for a future pier?
That's a good question, and it might. The short answer is it absolutely might. This task force that I assembled to make a recommendation to me is to come up with a planning, the process for design and selection of the new pier. It may entail some incorporation of a waterfront master plan. Now, I'm not going to put words in whatever they're going to do and what they're going to propose as far as inclusiveness and RFP, who should be what. I doubt we'll get an international design suggestion. I doubt we'll get a jury selection process, but I'm going to leave that up to them. But if there is a necessity to fast track this waterfront master planning process, I'm willing to do that. I don't know that we have to wait until 2015 to do that.
And in an ideal situation, yes. The answer would be yes to that. But we find ourselves in a situation today that's not ideal, and that we have a pier that's been closed down, that could have remained open, businesses could have kept going. There have been some changes to the way it operates, of course, because some of the structure was problematic for heavy vehicles, but it could have been, and that could have happened. But we don't find ourselves in that situation. So I think any task force that's reformed that looks at where do we go from here has to be mindful of the fact that there is, at the same time, ongoing a waterfront master planning process that's being undertaken. And they do have to work together, and that waterfront master plan is going to have to incorporate whatever comes out of that task force. So they are going to have to work together. It's unfortunate that they're not going to be able to be done in really the way that would have been ideal.
Good question. I had a suggestion about a year ago because I anticipated, based on conversations I had with a lot of folks with the vote on the pier, that, the folks in St. Pete really love their waterfront. So I had suggested back then that we come up with a primary ballot that would list all the possible choices. For example, do we want to preserve and refurbish the inverted pyramid? Do we want the looping sidewalk lanes? Do we want to have a different pier? Do we want to have no pier at all? Do we want to wait and have the waterfront master plan group come up with a choice? I think that that's what should happen in November. We're going to be voting on Stop the Lens. It would be my hope that City Council would put, do you want to keep the inverted pyramid, yes or no, and that we would know the answer to that question by November, before everybody launches off into this master waterfront plan, and before And the reason I say that is because this inverted pyramid is structurally sound. It sits on 4 or 5 concrete caissons. It's all structurally sound. That's, I think, 60,000 62 square feet, 62,000 square.
20 by 20, and there's 62 feet into the lime rock below.
That's how solid it is. But I'm talking about the actual square footage of the inverted pyramid, because there's some first floor retail on the bottom. But I think that that's where we need to go, is we need to find out what the citizens want to do about the inverted pyramid. We're going to find out whether or not they like the lens. And I think if they like the lens on August 27th, that'll take care of that decision. But if it's going to be defeated, as it looks likely, then I think we have to ask that question of what do we want to do with that inverted pyramid, because it's a significant 78,000 square feet of commercial space out there. Mind you, a portion of that is the first floor retail that was not a part of the original design, but you all probably know this. The way Harvard and Jolly designed that inverted pyramid was for 2 or 3 more stories to go on top. So we could take that first floor retail and put it on the top.
And we'll put a clock up there because the time has elapsed.
So I think we should do that. Thank you.
I'd like you to join me in sending a very, very warm round of applause for our candidates. For your time, for your talent, for your willingness to serve, for your patience, and for your perseverance through this evening. And the same is extended to each and every one of you. It's important that you're involved. It's important that you involve your neighbors, your family members, your friends, your co-workers. This is an important decision, and it's the only one that we have available to us to make. Don't sleep it. It's critically important that you be involved. Every one of the issues that was brought to the attention of this entire group is of importance to someone. And I would urge you, encourage you, beg, please, prod, and all of those things to be involved from now through November, through the appointment of the next mayor, and through the 4 years that that individual will be serving as mayor. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you for your willingness to listen. We encourage you to speak. With that, I'm going to offer to you